Hello and welcome. My name is Ken Fry, and I'm your presenter for today. On January 31st, we broadcast the original webinar to the FIATech community. However, we had some technical difficulties recording that session. So it's now about a week later, and I'm going to recapture this so that you can replay it at your own convenience and share it with your partners. So Eva Leos was our moderator at the time, and she opened up the webinar. She welcomed our participants and introduced myself, Ken Fry, and that's where I'll begin. Thank you, Eva, and welcome again to FIATech's Tech Tuesday webinar series. Let me start off by saying that I'm certainly not an expert in the capital facilities industry. I actually studied some aspects of civil engineering while attending Rensselaer Polytech Institute. However, I shifted my studies toward mechanical engineering with a concentration on the management of technology. I've been a member of FIATech for a couple of years now, and I've done a lot of thinking about our mission together, how we got here today, and where we might go in the future. So I humbly submit some of my insights on how we might lead the next capital facilities revolution by driving the digital enterprise together. When you registered for this webinar, you might recall there were 4 questions on the registration form. The majority of people on the call today claim to have a decent understanding of what the term digitalization really meant or means. However, from the graph, I can see that general level of confidence starts to fall off with your ability to understand the implications, the possibilities and risks posed, or maybe the potential solutions for digitalization. So to help better understand all of these, let me start off with a history lesson. The chain of events that brought us together today may have started about 4,000 years ago. The first known use of drawings and scale models for the purpose of communication goes back to ancient Egyptian times when they were constructing the pyramids. An important skill that engineers need when planning and constructing a facility is the ability to communicate the proposed design. Why? Not only to secure the developer's approval, but to also provide the work instructions to the hundreds of people involved in constructing it precisely as the engineer conceived it. The Great Pyramid of Khufu is an incredible construction achievement for its time. 756 feet long on each side, 481 feet high, composed of 2.3 million stones, weighing on average nearly 3 tons each. It was the tallest man-made structure on Earth for over 3,800 years. And the perfect right angles of the blocks are so accurate that a human hair cannot even be passed between them. The materials chosen, they proved a lifespan of nearly 4,000 years. In the first capital facilities revolution coincided with the Neolithic Age. And if you remember this period from history, this is a period marked by the development of human technology. Well, this period set in motion a series of trends that would dramatically change the course of humanity. Demographics transition of staying settled, our first urbanization, and our first building code. I'm going to talk about a building code just in a second, but it's probably not by chance that the cradle of civilization I'm referring to here was Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The Tower of Babel, pictured here, was constructed when King Hammurabi ruled between 1792 and 1750 BC in an area known today as Iraq. The king unified the city-states of Mesopotamia, and he helped to make Babylon one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. During his rule, the king created the earliest known principles of construction law. That was a set of rules and building codes intended to protect the public health, the safety, and the general welfare. The code was inscribed on a 7-foot clay, and it laid out a set of rules for the construction and the occupancy of buildings and structures. Let me paraphrase just a few of the many rules to you. If a builder build a house for a man and complete it, that man shall give him 2 shekels of silver per sar, or, in other words, about 1/2 of an ounce for every 116 square feet constructed. If he did not make the home which he built firm, and it collapsed, he shall rebuild the house which collapsed from his own property at his own expense. And if a builder build a house for a man, and do not make his construction firm, and the house which he has built collapse and cause the death of the owner of the house, the builder shall be put to death. Most buildings at that time were unique and new designs, so architects had to make predictions about the performance of their buildings. And that confidence level is quite easy if we're doing something we've already done in the past. But that was not the case during the growth that transpired during the Neolithic Age. But even today, one of the most important engineering skills is to generate sufficient confidence that a proposed design will perform as it was intended. Hammurabi's code was very harsh. Sure. However, it was the first evidence of law being passed on the principles of justice. And the first building code helped advance our profession by including laws that pioneered both the idea of professional responsibility and the fact that such work required specialized skills. And that brings us to the second capital facilities revolution. It was a revolution that would define the professional engineering discipline for the design, construction, and maintenance of the physical and naturally built environments. Things like roads, bridges, dams, canals, and buildings. And the first proclaimed civil engineer we refer to as the father of civil engineering. His name was John Smeaton. He constructed the Eddystone Lighthouse and later, along with his colleagues, formed the Smeaton Society of Civil Engineers in 1771. It was the first engineering society to be formed anywhere in the world, and it remains the oldest. And the profession caught on, and 64 years later, the first civil engineering degree in the United States was awarded by my alma mater, Rensselaer Polytech Institute, in 1835. That led the way to many specialized disciplines, such as structural, geotechnical, construction engineering, material science, and water. And at the same time, the first industrial revolution was changing the landscape and marks our first real disruptive technology. The first industrial revolution used steam power to mechanize production. The exploitation of Americas at this time was fueled by the Scottish economist Adam Smith. In his famous book, The Wealth of Nations, that was first published in 1776, the concept was simple. The economic system can be automatic and when left with substantial freedom from government, able to regulate itself. Government allowed this, and they allowed businesses to self-manage matters, so as to make their income exceed expenses and then reinvest a portion of their profits back into the business. And this was something new at this time. But as a result, hundreds of these factories, often 5- or 6-story factories, they were engineered, constructed, commissioned, and operated with, you've seen these complex set of shafts, gears, pulleys, and leather belts, all kind of interconnected and all driven by a single, centralized, and massive steam engine located on the first floor of the building. And it was always built close to waterways, and just an incredible marvel for their time. Okay, so at this point, the capital facilities and the industrial revolutions were bound together and would remain so. And in the early 1800s, another key person helped set the course that we're on today. He was born December 13th, 1816. And that's just 45 years after the Smeaton Society of Civil Engineers was formed in London. And my company celebrated his 200th anniversary last month. His name is Werner von Siemens. He was a German inventor and industrialist. One of his inventions was the dynamo, which is an electric generator. And when he invented it, he called his brother. He said, "Brother, I think I have created something that's going to change the world." Well, he was absolutely right. It gave us the electric motor, which enabled the second industrial revolution. So Siemens and Smeaton probably never met. Maybe they did. It was close in time. However, the connection and interdependencies of the capital facilities revolution and the industrial revolution was established and would be increasingly intertwined and interdependent. That brings us to the third capital facilities revolution. And this third capital facilities revolution can be referred to as the age of computers and information. Our entire economy, along with a good chunk of our GDP, is now supported by IT. Eventually, information and communication became a significant part of the capital facilities industry also. The computer and information age has shifted our business to one that's now fueled by high-tech global economy and shifted our king, right? So capturing the knowledge, capturing information and data in the digital enterprise, that's now the new king these days. So this period coincided with the third industrial revolution. So let me do a quick review. The first industrial revolution used steam power to mechanize the production. The second used electric power to divide the labor and support mass production. And the third used electronics and information technology to automate production. And that brings us to today in the megatrends that are shaping our world. Let's start with population. Projections that we're going to grow to over 10 billion by 2050. And think about our unique challenges in the aging population to adopt emerging technology. Think about our urban areas, which are increasing by 200,000 people every day. All of people who need buildings, transportation, and utility infrastructure. Think about 30% of the global greenhouse emissions that are attributable to the buildings that we're constructing. You have to consider that impact on the climate changes and the weather extremes. The globalization on how capital investments will move around the world and the rapid acceleration of digital transformation. Okay, so as we wrap up our history lesson and move into our current challenges and how we are addressing them, let's watch this short video to help us get into a forward-thinking mindset. So, I think we all understand and we all see and recognize that technology is changing our lives. And digitalization is really changing everything, transforming business models and increasing the pressure on all of us. So what does that mean for the capital facilities and industrial revolutions today? Let me remind you again, I'm not an expert in this industry, and most of my career has been focused on the automotive and aerospace industries and a little bit of shipbuilding. But over the last couple of years, here's what I've come to understand in the capital facilities industry. The use of mainframe computers for structural analysis of bridges and buildings came about in the 1950s. Finite element modeling of stress analysis in the 60s. In the 70s brought us computer-aided drawings, computer-generated drawings of buildings. And in the 80s gave us 3D modeling of facilities, computational fluid dynamics in the 90s, and then at the turn of the century, gave us the building information modeling capabilities. So that's just a lot of information and data that gets generated for every capital project, and that amount of data keeps growing and growing. Also, it's my understanding that the owners and owner-operators, they outsource most aspects of the capital project. Before handover, EPCs and owner-operators, they don't use the same project lifecycle management systems, and here I'm talking documents, data, and information. And the EPCs develop and manage the IP of the facility, let's say in this case a plant, but ownership of that virtual intellectual property is unclear. And only the owner-operators have, the EPCs has visibility, but the owner-operators only have the limited visibility, right? They're somewhat in the dark of real-time project status. EPCs only do what's contractually required and get paid at predefined % complete milestones, and those are difficult to prove. And at handover, EPCs deliver the plant information, often dumbed down translation of that data, to the owner-operator per the contract specifications. And I've seen some of these specifications. Sometimes it's as simple as like a PDF, an Excel, or just give me a 3D model with very vague definition of what that means. And the owner-operators are then burdened with consolidating, storing, and managing the vast amounts of plant information on their own. So now after handover, right, so that IP is neither protected or preserved or maintained after handover, right? I'm talking about the as built and as maintained. And the owner-operators struggle with finding, managing, and sharing the needed plant information to support operations and maintenance for the facility's remaining life. It might be 30, 40 years. There's got to be a better way, right? What we're really struggling with is IT and OT, but those have been emerging for the last 50 years, maybe 60 years. So why haven't we mastered this yet? So to answer that question, let's go back to our history lesson. Each of those revolutions also took decades for them to really take hold. Remember when the electric motor influenced the industrial revolution for the second industrial revolution? Well, that took a long time to take hold. Decades. And it wasn't the large enterprises, those with those legacy infrastructure and systems, who initially adopted them. No. It was the smaller companies, typically, who started the trend because they didn't need to change. And they didn't need to disrupt their current behaviors and systems. That's kind of hard to do, right? But I'll submit to you that we are now at a tipping point of the next revolution, and there are clues all around us. The next industrial revolution is indeed taking place. We're now focused on getting to the next level of productivity, and it's been a long battle. But it's coming, and it's coming fast. The fourth industrial revolution is building on the third. It's characterized by a fusion of technology that is blurring the lines between the physical and the digital facility, along with the information and data spheres that pass between them. I would offer that we're also entering a fourth capital facilities revolution, characterized by rapidly accelerating innovation. We got big data and analytics all around us, being able to provide real-time, cloud-powered analytics of large and unstructured data sets. And will redefine the traditionally fraught relationships between all the parties of construction firms. Got ubiquitous connectivity and tracking that will soon occur using any device in any location and in any format. And cognitive intelligence is ushering a new era of computing, fundamentally different from what we're used to with conventional programming. It actually mirrors the same cognitive processes that we use every day to understand the world around us. And there are three reasons why today's transformations represent not merely a prolongation of the third capital facilities revolution, but rather the arrival of the fourth and a distinct one by that. And those are velocity, scope, and systems impact. The fourth is evolving so fast, it's exponential rather than linear, and it's disrupting almost every aspect of businesses. And the breadth and depth of these changes herald the transformation of entire systems of production, management, and governance. So there lies a key to how we need to think about and respond in the next phase. So how is FIATEC addressing these challenges? FIATEC has assembled industry experts to understand what's already been implemented and what gaps need to be filled, and are there dependencies that we need to consider. They've identified 8 leadership initiatives from which active projects are drawn and distributed, and they've identified 12 productivity advancement targets, we call those PATs, each corresponding with an improvement potential, and a collective list of over 400 success enablers. And they provided a base cost model, which companies can use, and I've used, to better understand what might a 33% decrease in cost or a 10% faster project, what that might mean for me personally, for my business personally. And finally, FIATEC is hosting 12 PAT work teams to get that hard work done. I'm currently chairing one of those 12 PATs. It's PAT number 1, and it's called Change Readiness, and it's addressing the people issues, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. So we've got it all figured out, right? No problem. Well, digitalization is changing everything. So the way we stay informed, the way we travel, the way we buy, the way we build, the way we operate, maintain, the business models are changing. And let's think about what we maybe haven't thought about or haven't anticipated. How should we think differently, and what might surprise us? Well, some EPCs are considering an approach that could dramatically disrupt the conventional business models for capital facilities. Some of them are looking to expand services beyond handover by owning and managing the digital twin of the plant, right? The as-built, the as-maintained, along with all the virtual IP and interdependencies between all the data for the facility's remaining life. Why not? Whoever owns the information, the data, the digital enterprise, they will become king. I'll call this the rise of the EPCs, right? Or the new king moving forward. This is all about transformation and disruption. And the key to survival and growth through digitalization is to become a digital enterprise and rethink the way work is done today and rethink every single aspect of the business. FIATEC believes this to be true also, right? They also believe the key is to rethink every element of our business. So FIATEC's taken a systems view when looking at the future of capital facilities. So what do I mean by a system in this context? Rather than components, let me use the word solutions, okay? So my definition would be of system would be a group of solutions that act together to produce results not obtainable by the individual solutions separately. Again, what I mean by systems thinking in this context is to provide a group of solutions that act together to produce results not obtainable by the individual solutions separately. And Fiatech is doing this by knocking down the individual world of worlds we live in now. We think of these as silos of point solutions. And they're in favor of a more holistic digital enterprise view of the entire value chain. In other words, a digitalization or simply digital approach is not enough. Digitalization weaves a digital thread through the entire value chain. And those firms who support those mega projects, often the big companies, they have the most to gain or potentially lose. So we should acknowledge how digitalization can serve as a vehicle for newer, more agile companies to leap ahead of existing market leaders. Just a little bit more than a year ago, Antoine Rosselin was throwing out the warning flags. He was screaming to fundamentally change the way that work gets done today, and suggesting you have to look forward and lead rather than respond. And if you don't move fast enough, you aren't going to be around. And Accenture understands this very well too. CIOs, and now maybe chief digital officers, are becoming more and more important to the survival of a company. They're faced with more opportunities and more challenges than ever before. In fact, executives are increasingly identifying digital transformation or the inability to achieve digital transformation as the key reason that companies have lost their positions in their markets. We also hear top executives giving some pretty dire predictions for the future. Here we have retiring Cisco CEO John Chambers. He told the 25,000 attendees at last year's Cisco Live event that 40% of the companies in the audience would be dead in 10 years. And then he went on to say that those that attempted to become digital, the majority of those would fail. So those kind of statements really hit you in the gut. And we don't want to fail. Our careers, our livelihoods are dependent on success. And here we have a lot of thought leaders saying that the deck is stacked against us. So why will these companies fail? Well, the first reason is that digital, I would venture to say, is not central to their company strategy. And when I hear what senior leaders say about digital, does the CIO sit on the board? Do they have a chief digital officer? What they publish in their annual report as initiatives and communicate on analyst calls, I can quickly tell if their view of digital is focused on achieving functional goals versus business goals. And the second reason is that digital is perceived as a back office strategy to drive efficiency. For example, I'm going to buy a new computer merely because it's faster, or a new technology simply because it's faster. So we have a digital strategy, but it's focused on efficiency gains rather than on transformation. The last two are really heavy hitters, and these are the ones we should really think carefully about. The third one, represented here very generically, is an isolated world of worlds view, where outputs of one process get thrown over a brick wall and not easily consumed as inputs into the next phase of the process. In the planning, it's the ideation, the bid tender management, the pre-feed, all the value that we bring to our customers, then defining not only the design and engineering of a facility, but how we want to build it and make sure it can be realized by better predicting the performance. Then we need to verify the operations, create the programs for the automation components, all the controllers, operator devices, the drives, the decentralized peripherals, motor management, and also motion control and power distribution. Then we need to fabricate and assembly. That needs to be monitored and coordinated throughout the build and handover process. And then we need to understand how our systems are operating and how our equipment and facilities are being utilized. So far too often, what we're doing is we're investing in point solutions, which I'll call digitization. And these are either disconnected or reliant on difficult and expensive integrations to bring together. And that's a real challenge, as each area creates a digital silo in itself, essentially going digital into their own domain without the clear connect to the overall value chain. In the final one, it's extremely impactful and perhaps the most daunting, and that's organizational change management. That's dealing with the culture changes needed to drive a digital enterprise. New roles, new responsibilities, new workloads, new requirements, new behaviors. That's tough. All of the exciting things that get me jumping out of bed in the morning. So just leaning out operations clearly isn't enough if we're going to digitalize across the entire value chain and drive the kind of business transformation envisioned by our senior leaders. So at this time, when we did the original broadcast, we opened up the webinar to polls, and we addressed a couple of questions to the audience to gather some feedback. So I'm going to share that with you now. We used GoToMeeting, but I had to reverse engineer this into Excel to provide a chart to you. The first question we didn't get to. I wanted to have one question for each of the reasons why we might fail. We never got to this one to understand what their approach is, because we saved a little bit of time in skipping over this one. So let me get to the three that we did cover. First question we did cover was, which statement below best represents how your organization justifies investments in technology? This project will allow us to do our job better. B, this project will allow us to do more work with the same or fewer resources. C, the project will allow us to increase our existing business profit. Or D, the project will enable us to enter completely new business in 3 to 5 years. Or not sure, was E. And we have a tie with this project will allow us to do our existing job better. The trick is there is that it's the same job. And D, I'm happy to report that the people on the call are actually looking at transforming their business. That might just be because the FIATech community itself is a little more advanced, so that could be just because of the audience members. The same kind of observation is made by the next question. Which statement below best represents your organization's, or what your organization is doing to compete in the market? Information management, document management, data management, digital enterprise, or not sure. So we have, let's see, 13 plus 22 plus 39. We got the majority of more than 50% not investing in digital enterprise, but we have 39% that are investing in it to compete in the market. Again, that might be because of the maturity level of the audience today, but this one was spot on with what my inclination was. It addresses the change readiness issue. So the question is, what statement below best represents your firm's change readiness approach to projects? A, it's addressed primarily through role-based training. B, we have dedicated staff for change readiness. C, we require certified practitioners. And D, we have integrated our change management and our project management office together. Or E, not sure. The report out here is suggesting that most people are just addressing this through training, just to make it a role-based training, is kind of sad. This is not nearly doing enough, and I would highly recommend that you dedicate staff for change readiness and you get qualified, certified practitioners, just like I talked about in our history lesson of certified engineers in the civil engineering discipline. It does take a skill, and it does help our cause. So I think what I'll do now is tell you a story of a visit I had last month. I was at an EPC firm, and I was speaking with the vice president of the company. And he was talking about issues, people issues that he had. And we were trying to, bounce some ideas back and forth. And he said, Ken, our people, they don't really want to change. Our people don't want to change. We want to change, but we got a problem. They kind of like the way things are done right here, around here today, and we need to change that. What advice would you give me? And so I bit my tongue for a little bit, and I took a deep breath, and I said, well, if you don't change their desire to change so that they can participate and get behind it, then you're not going to be in business 5 years, 10 years down the road. You're simply going to fail. You're going to die eventually. You have to change. You always have to reinvent yourself. You can't continue doing the same thing. And then I told him that if you want me to help you, I can help you. Or if you want to pay an expensive consulting firm who deals with people issues, I'm sure they will help you. But the heavy lifting is going to fall upon your leadership. You're really the only ones that can tell your people what you want and how to change culture. It's going to take some rolling up the sleeves. You have to get behind this. You can't just wait for things to happen. So we had an interesting conversation. Let's see. Another thing I want to share with you, it talks about perhaps there's more that we can do to have some control over our destiny. So I want to tell you about a game that I used to play when I was growing up. The kids in my neighborhood played a game called tag. Most of us probably played this game. We called it tag, or we called it you're it, or simply it. So the way it worked was a group of kids would decide who would start out as being it, and he or she would be put in the middle of a field, and two safe zones were marked at each opposite sides of the field. And these safe zones, we called them ghoul. I don't know why we called them ghoul, but if you made it to ghoul, you were in your safe zone. And the objective was to leave one ghoul and make it to the other side without getting tagged by it. And if you got tagged while crossing the field, you become it for the next round. So the whole point was it's all about taking risks and seeing what happens. So what typically would happen is most kids, they just played it safe. And they'd only step out 2 or 3 steps from ghoul, right? And then they would taunt and chant IT, na 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 na. And when the person who played it would approach them, those kids would just jump right back into ghoul. So what's the fun in that? They never really knew what they were capable of, because most of them didn't take the risk and they just played it safe. And they waited too long to leave ghoul. Well, as a consequence, they never transformed their skills, and rather than attempt something different, they were easily singled out and eventually forced to leave ghoul, and then they would just get tagged. And they were it. Most of the time, they were, because of their approach, they were it far too often. So they'd miss the whole point of the game. So how would you ever know what you're capable of if you stay in your safe zone too long, right? You're going to fail anyway. So the point of my stories here about my meeting with the vice president and my game of tag is, in order to step into our destiny, we have to step away from our security. Right? That makes sense, right? Again, in order to step into our destiny, we have to step away from our security. And when should we be, bold? When should we take these bold steps? Well, we shouldn't wait 5 years, 10 years when we're out of business, right? We need to seek out a new way forward and step out of our ghoul, our safe zone, before it's too late. So what is the new way forward? And how do we leverage those technological forces transforming the industry? And what's changing in the business? Siemens, we're changing the way facility ideas come to life with convergent modeling to create intelligent models from scan data, with systems of systems, with breakthroughs in optioneering. We also refer to this as fourth generation design to reduce complexity of managing those very, very large structures. And we're changing the way facilities are realized with machine learning, software and systems that teach themselves to respond and grow when exposed to new data. And advanced robotics are more widely being adopted in every industry, including ours. Why? Because they lower cost, right? And they're now performing more of the human tasks, and they have ability to work right alongside humans. And Siemens is changing the way facilities are used. Cloud technology, we're bringing that on for greater global deployment options and providing big data analytics, right? Examining those large data sets containing a variety of data types to uncover the hidden patterns, the unknown correlations, market trends, customer preferences, and lots of other business useful information. So when you look at these fundamental changes to ideation, to realization, and to utilization, and we bring that together with the value chain that drives the business, we clearly need solutions that not only cover the entire value chain, but tie the value chain together in an entirely new way, establishing that common digital thread along the entire value chain, which actually compresses and transforms the innovation lifecycle. That accelerated innovation process is supported by the digital twin. The digital twin of the entire enterprise allows virtual optimization before committing the resources and enabling the what-if scenarios to explore new concepts and resolve the future problems. So this approach to integrating and digitalizing the entire value chain combines collaboration platform capabilities with cloud-based capabilities to integrate across the business from suppliers to customers. Leveraging that powerful digital twin, let's look at that digital twin and think about how it can be leveraged. So it has three components. The digital twin has three different facets. The equipment twin, in this case, the characteristics associated with the equipment, the requirements, formulations, the breeding, the packing. The operational process, which is the digital representation of everything associated with the operational process, the throughput, the cycle times, and the capital facility twin, all the resources, the systems, the plant, the processing facility, right? These things all come together in a single data model. The digital twin is very powerful because it can be leveraged to simulate in the virtual world what is going to happen in the real world, enabling us to seamlessly drive the resources in the real world, which then feeds us information about the utilization, which helps drive more innovation into the ideation process. Let's take a look at a real-life example of the digital twin in action as it's transforming the cell phone business. Cell phone cases have always been stamped. The long lead time item in stamping is the tool change, which used to take about 6 months. But as the innovation cycles for mobile device technology have gotten shorter and shorter, we crossed that threshold where we can change over the tooling as fast as the designs are coming out. So the new way forward is to leverage the digital twin directly in the manufacturing process, employing advanced manufacturing capability that can be changed instantaneously over through digitalization. The new process leverages the digital twin of, in this situation, the product, to drive the twin of the production process, to drive the twin of the equipment. So that the change is instantaneous after being fully validated through the digital twin. Through leverage of the digital twin, one of our customers, a supplier to the iPhone business, which is the example that I'm showing here, is they're able to drive faster to market with increased flexibility, higher quality, with better throughput and efficiency. Now I'm going to take you to our own factory. Siemens has over 300 factories. We make everything from wind turbines to switchgears, and we make SIMATIC PLCs at our Amberg facility pictured here. Amberg is not a large factory by no means, but it's fast. So we produce more than 1 million products a month. That's about one every second. To be that quick, you need very high levels of automation, perfectly honed logistics, and normally you'd need long, stable runs of identical product configurations. But not in Amberg. We have a growing portfolio of 1,300 products digitally designed in NX for 60,000 different customers. We are so efficient in introducing new products into manufacturing that we guarantee a 24-hour lead time for runs down to lot sizes of 1. That means that out on the shop floor, there's this eclectic mix of products flowing simultaneously through the plant. The optimized plan for each one built into its bill of process and guided individually around the plant by SIMATIC IT, coordinating machines and people that collaborate to build product configurations they may have never seen before and will never see again. Try achieving those levels of speed and flexibility in a traditional plant and you'll pay huge amounts of rework. In Amberg, despite the fact that 25% of the operations are still performed by humans, we are able to achieve a defect rate of just 11.5 defects per million. And that's just about perfection. At this point, you're probably wondering, what is the Siemens solution, right? Well, let me assure you, I'm not going to use the FIATEC webinar series to highlight Siemens products. I just have one slide regarding Siemens, and then I'm going to focus on another solution. And so let me get through this. Siemens, we're the first company to imagine the digitalization of manufacturing from end to end, and that really accelerated with the acquisition of UGS in 2007. I became a part of this evolution in 1992 when I joined a company called EDS, who had acquired Unigraphics, and at that time offered specialized solutions for the aerospace and automotive industries primarily. Most of my career with Siemens can be summarized as expanding those solutions into other industries. And now, my company, me personally, are focused on providing specialized solutions for the capital facilities industry. We continue to invest in our portfolio to keep pace with what's going on in the market with digitalization changes and the opportunities. So this includes more than 6 billion euros for R&D since 2007, and that's to advance our organic portfolio. And we've invested more than 4 billion euros in acquisitions in the same time period. So just in the last 3 years, we've invested more than 2 billion euros and are penning yet another major acquisition. Okay, so this is the other solution. While working with the FIATEC community over the last couple of years, I personally have not been focused much on the technical side of projects. Or I've not been focused much on talking about our software or hardware solutions either. I've been focused rather on a different kind of solution when working with FIATEC. So what is that? So you remember earlier the 4 reasons why most companies will fail to move to a digitally enabled business model, right? So do you remember which one was the most daunting? It was number 4, right? It was that most of us will fail to drive the necessary cultural changes needed to adopt and sustain digital enterprise strategy. The FIATech community has an active PAT team, PAT 1, that I'm chairing called Change Readiness. We highly encourage you to become part of that team. Our goal is to improve sustained innovation adoption by 55%. We meet virtually every month, face-to-face twice each year. In its simplest form, Change Readiness has 2 components. At the project level, we're encouraging the use of proven methodology and tools to manage the people side. On the organizational level, we're encouraging leadership competency, right? And we're trying to increase that change saturation that a company can handle. And the results of a recent survey by ProSci indicate a direct correlation. This is really why we're doing what we're doing. A direct correlation between the effectiveness of our approach and the overall success of our project outcomes. In this case, predictability, right? It's less projects overrun with budget and schedule. And participants with the highest level of change effectiveness were nearly 6 times more likely to meet or exceed project objectives. Direct correlation, right? But we don't have to be best at this. Even if we achieve a fair level of change readiness effectiveness, the correlation is a 3 times impact on project success. Let's take a closer look at this impact and see what we might learn from the manufacturing sector. Here's some manufacturing insight from ProSci. And it suggests that the dedicated change management resource is at par with the industry average, but the percent of the project budget allocated to change management for this industry is above par, 21%, 21.4%. So for every project of capital project, 21% is dealing of the budget is successfully managing the people side. I would say that use this best practice in our industry as a benchmark and get towards that number. If you get towards that number and you put a structured method behind it, you're going to have a positive correlation on your project success outcomes. Next, this was one of the questions that we polled the audience for, talking about integration between change management and project management. And of those firms that were most successful, 60% of that have crossed that threshold of integration. And the highest dimension of integration be the results integration shown on the right. 59% as opposed to 56%. And the last I just want to share with you, and there are more, but this last one I want to share with you today talks about the role of a sponsor. A lot of times sponsors don't understand their role. They are willing to do what's necessary, but they need a little bit of reminder or guidance on what to do, how to actively and visibly participate, how to be involved and build a coalition of support and communicate directly. This goes back to my story with the vice president. If I, an external provider, tell your people how they need to change and try to establish a sense of urgency to motivate them and desire that to get behind the change, they're probably not going to listen to me. Their leader inside their own company and their direct managers are the best people to communicate directly about the change. So, at this point, we opened it up. I said a few words about our partnership. I told the audience that our partnership and FIATech's involvement will allow an ongoing dialogue, and I'm looking forward at the art of the possible so that we can lead the fourth capital facilities and industrial revolutions together. And then I turned it over to Eva, who handled a couple of questions from the audience. And I'll just read those to you and tell you what I said. The first one was, my company uses a lot of different systems. Do we have to get rid of all these systems, essentially telling our management that they wasted money on these in order to become digitalized with Siemens solutions? So my answer was no, you don't. In fact, I had a lot of calls the week prior to our broadcast from concerned members that I would mention ISO 15926. And I failed to do that in my delivery of the presentation. So the answer is no. You don't have to get rid of all those existing systems. We have invested in ISO 15926 in the past, and we will continue to do so in the future. And my message is that in a digital world, closed systems are dead systems. Openness must be our way forward. And our open platform and adherence to international standards delivers results through, it's really an evolutionary process for us. One of our acquisitions along our journey was a company that focused solely on integrations. That was important to us. So we can support lots of standards. We have to support all of them, right? ISO 15926, ISO 14306, ISO 95, Profinet, OPC, UA, and on and on and on. Okay, the next question was a simple. Will you be distributing a recording of the webinar to attendees? Yes, we will. And me recording this right now is evidence that we ran into some recording problems at the beginning and end, so this repeat will serve to complete that task. All other questions can and will be addressed via email, so after watching this, if you have other questions that were not addressed now, or I have not emailed you with a question yet, or replied to your question yet, go ahead, feel free to do so. Reach out to me directly at ken.frye@siemens.com. That's ken.frye@siemens.com. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and seeing you again at future FIATech events. And I will continue working on my change readiness mission, which is to help individuals and organizations build their own change readiness competencies through the development and delivery of proven, holistic, and easy to use change readiness tools and methodologies. And with that, I was able to preserve Eva's closing notes, so I'll stitch those together now.
Okay, so it's all about that continuous integration and moving all of the equipment into one place so that they can interface and connect with each other.
Yes.
Which is one of the aspects that the 2017 Technology Conference is going to focus a lot on. We are focusing on that hands-on aspect, the future technology, and how all of those pieces can work together. Obviously, the human component continues to be a very big part of ensuring that we all interconnect and continue to move towards the future. So I'd like to remind everybody to please save the date for the upcoming technology conference. It is April 10th through 12th in Orlando, Florida. More information is available on our website and on the last page of this webinar. So I encourage you to consider participating in that event and interacting and meeting with more people who are looking towards the future of maximizing that technology, like Ken was referencing, that Siemens new tools are available. And of course there's many other tools that interface, interact, and work together. As many have reminded us about ISO, the process is all about bringing them together. Let's not have anything closed off. So I thank everybody for participating. I look forward to our next webinar. More information about the webinars are available on fiatech.org, and we'd like to thank Ken once again for bringing together all of this information. The history lesson was very insightful, and we look forward to the next one. Thank you all for attending.